Uranium friends, let's have a look at the ETF. So URA, URNM, URNJ, these are daily charts. Last video I think I did, I said the weekly lower high is the most likely scenario. So we'll go to URA first, and we'll take a look at that. So the weekly lower high, it's set, man. So we have a range, and when stuff like this occurs, I'm going to kill this arrow. When stuff like this occurs, I'm starting to see a range that gets defined, right? So 27.55 for the high and 22.79 for the low. This is the range, short-term trading range that has been established. Now, the good thing is, there's enough space here to say that a likely scenario is a higher low compared to this level, but it's been quite the drawdown. So even if we let me just kill these. I'm going to kill the main fibs. I'm going to run a new fib just on this move, right? So once you get a pivot, by the way, you can run a Fibonacci retracement, right? So we have this range here, this move here that we can run our fib off of now because we got a good solid pivot. So here is the Fibonacci retracement setup for this one run. And it's big time red flaggy, right? So once it breaks a 50% retracement, any move that breaches its 50% retracement, I don't care if it's a 5-minute move on a 5-minute chart or it's a monthly move on a monthly chart. Any move that you can work off 2 decent pivots and make a fib pull. Any move that breaches 50%, it's problematic, right? So then you start looking down at the golden pocket zone where often you get bounces, and we're already breaching through that. So it's just not a good look. It makes the likelihood of this bottom holding, quite frankly, a lot less likely. Doesn't mean that that's going to be the case. It just means that we have to be fearful of this low being taken out, and then we have to start looking at our next levels, right? So into this volume profile, there's support in here, support down in 22, 21 area, right? That's where the support is next that we would be looking at, right? You can see the action here. There's a lot of action. So, and it bounced off of this action. So if it takes it out, then we have to start looking down more into the structure, and the volume profile is going to come into play. But regardless of that, that's the deal here. So there's nothing overly positive about the price action in the sector in general. And this is the ETF, URA, which I use as the gauge. I know others don't because they make the claim that it's not a mining pure play. Okay. But this is where the institutional money is going to be looking. It's got a vibrant option chain. It has the liquidity, far superior liquidity than URNM and URNJ. So, in my opinion, this is the gauge. Now, you can go back to some of my videos. I talked about weekly distribution looking like it was occurring in here, while plenty of others were saying quite the opposite. So, this Wyckoff weekly distribution setup is, well, it's confirming. It already has. So, and I'm not a Wyckoff expert, but I think that I'm going to try to spend the time following it, and I'm going to do it on video, and maybe we learn together. But I'm definitely not a Wyckoff guy. But I feel like I recognized it early. We'll see. You know, um, hopefully I can recognize the accumulation phase early. But that's the deal. So I'm not positive about this low holding, but anybody who bought in this area, well, they just got a great daily oversold bounce. Because if you look at the daily, it was an oversold. It's a classic daily oversold bounce, right? But it did make a 20% move. So yeah, if you caught the bottom, well, lucky you, right? But it's a decent 20% move. So even if you caught half of that, you got a good 10% trade out of this thing, right? So it's likely that most traders, anyone who's savvy, once this high was taken out and it held, it's kind of a buy signal, right? And if we recall, we were looking at this, we were following this on the 4-hour chart, and the volume was low. I said there was going to be, I said there's a low volume grind. It was likely going, or possibly, if you know the sector, it's going to turn into a volume pop. It did exactly that, right? So someone say, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's fundamental news, whatever." Um, but it gave it all back, and that's the problem. So the sector still does not look great by any stretch of the imagination. So let's look at URNM and see if there's anything different about it. It's probably going to look a lot alike, and I'm going to do the same thing with these fibs. I'll just do a fib, another fib, just to see if it does actually have any sort of difference with the URA. Yeah, this has already gone through the golden pocket and is now it's rejecting that level, right? So these become important levels. The 61% retracement on a fib run is an important level. It's usually where bounces are. It's just that way for Fibonacci stuff. So it got through it, and it's now using it as resistance. URA hasn't done that. URA is just getting through it, hasn't back tested into it. So I guess there's something different there. Uh, weekly. Yeah, it's like that's these levels. They're starting to be. Um, I have much less confidence that this bottom holds. It's just what it comes down to. So now I'm starting to think about next levels. That's what traders do. People that are positioning or trading around the core like I'm doing, right? So I'm looking at a pretty strong support level down at 35. That 35 area is a pretty strong support. This is a decent support area. So if this holds, it's a great sign, right? So maybe there's a nice little flush undercut, but maybe these Wyckoff distribution thing is just not done yet. I don't know. So we'll see. But I have less confidence that this bottom is going to hold. That's just the truth. I think that's going to be that way in the space until further notice, right? So URNJ, this was quite a bit of volume here, and if you follow volume leaders on Twitter, they pointed it out as well. Some dark pool prints or some just high volume print here. Um, Seek them out. I think I even reposted it, or maybe if I can find it, I'll put it in a link or something, just so you can see what those things mean. Some high volume prints. For every seller there's a buyer, for every buyer there's a seller. Blah blah blah. So we'll see. Again, it's for me at the moment. It's just levels, right? It's just key levels. So URNM and URA don't look great. Same thing holds true for your NJ. So then I'm just going to be like, all right, I got to start looking down in here as my next support levels, right? The 16, the 15, probably the 15 to 16 area. Well, 16, right around 16. Um, so this is probably it's interesting, right? URNJ is young, so it's hard to get full blown price action on this thing and to get good historical data. URNJ, you could say that it's still trying to find its market, its mean, its value area. We've got one up here. It's probably going to end up to being major resistance zones as when we eventually revisit. But let's see what the lower value area ends up being. It should be quote unquote somewhere in the 16 range. But that doesn't preclude it from going down to 13, 14, 15 bucks. But I would think because the majority of the volume, this is when it changed, right? It came out, yeah, there was some trading in it, whatever. It started to build the base down here. The valuations were down here based upon whatever the spot price was or long-term contracts were, which are up now. Um, but then it found a new value. It's more acceptance here. So these early peeps, happiness, right? Even these players are fairly happy at the moment, I would guess, especially if they trimmed out. But if this level breaks, you have to look down into this value area here. So this is the next spot where I'm looking to see if it holds. If this breaks here, I mean, we're kind of in a zone. I mean, you could technically draw a rectangle here, believe it or not, right? You could do something right, I would say right to this effect right here. Hold on. I would say it's going to be somewhere right in here because it's catching all these tops too. Um, no, I don't want that. I want something like this. Right in here somewhere. It would be right in there. I would say this is a bit of a value area here. So, support areas because the younger the name, the less more difficult it is to have a historical data for big levels. But I would say somewhere in here, and we're in here testing it. You got the good bounce out of it the first time. Got to see what happens next. I would guess because it's come down so much, I can't see it uh, not testing, and that doesn't mean it would be bad. You know what I mean? Maybe a flush out into this level and then a bounce, but who knows? Uh, Macro conditions are going to dictate. So long-winded, much longer video than I hoped to do, but over and out, man.